the 7 years of plenty that occurred in the land of Egypt came to an end, and the 7 years of famine began to come, just as Joseph had said. There was a famine in all lands, but in all the land of Egypt there was bread. When all the land of Egypt was famished, the people cried to Pharaoh for bread. Pharaoh said to all the Egyptians, "Go to Joseph. Whatever he says to you, do." So when the famine had spread over all the land, Joseph opened all the storehouses and sold to the Egyptians, for the famine was severe in the land of Egypt. Moreover, all the earth came to Egypt to Joseph to buy grain, because the famine was severe over all the earth. In Genesis chapter 12, God makes Abraham a promise to make Abraham a great nation through whom, God says, all the families of the earth shall be blessed. God then binds himself to Abraham in covenant relationship, assuring him that he will be faithful to his promises. And so the remainder of Genesis 12 all the way through 50, is the unfolding of this promise, the demonstration of God's covenant faithfulness to one of the most flawed families in the biblical story. And the story of this family reaches its climax, at least in Genesis, in the work of Abraham's great-great-grandson, Joseph. The most obvious reason is, of course, because Joseph is the great-great-grandson of Abraham. He's his offspring. So God has made Abraham into a people, just like he promised. And soon, if you cheat over to Exodus chapter 1, you see that God has made Abraham into a great nation. But more than that, the family of Abraham is fulfilling their vocation, their responsibility as that family. See, notice the common language. God promises in Abraham that through his family, all the families of the earth will be blessed. And now in Genesis 41:57, the author says that all the earth came to Egypt to Joseph during the famine. So God has been faithful to his promise. And the way God fulfilled and is faithful to this promise through Joseph is really interesting. See, most of us think that the calling to bless the nations means venturing out on some kind of evangelistic or missionary endeavor. But Joseph was just doing his job. He had risen to second in command in Egypt, and so preparing for a famine and making necessary decisions to provide for the populace was just a part of his job description. They were occupational expectations. So this wasn't mission work. This was government work, quite frankly, which Joseph undertook as one in whom is the Spirit of God. That's Genesis 41:38. And nor was Joseph's work evangelistic in the traditionally understood sense. He didn't bless all the earth with his sermons or his preaching crusades. He did so through acts of social justice, gathering food for 7 years and then allocating the food to important cities so that food could then be distributed to the poor and to the needy. And so those who say God doesn't care about social justice, quite frankly, need to familiarize themselves with the story of Joseph. But notice how Joseph even arrived in Egypt in the first place. It isn't like Moses, who encounters God in a burning bush and is commissioned and sent to Egypt as his people's liberator. Joseph was sold into slavery in Egypt by his brothers of all people. And he was then falsely accused of sexual assault by his master's wife, which resulted in his imprisonment. But throughout this series of unfortunate events, you'll have to forgive my movie title reference there, is the constant refrain, the Lord was with Joseph. The Lord was with him, and the Lord was with him, such that at the end of Genesis, Joseph can confidently tell his brothers, "You meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to bring it about that many people should be kept alive as they are today." The book of Genesis, particularly chapters 12 through 50, does not tell some romantic pie-in-the-sky by-and-by story. It tells a very messy story of God fulfilling His promises through folks with troubled backgrounds, tragic histories, and day jobs. And so many of us will never have the opportunity to bless the nations like Billy Graham did. But we all have the opportunity today and tomorrow and the next day and the next day to do our daily duties as those in whom God's Spirit is, confident that as the Lord was with Joseph, so the Lord is with us, and He will bring about good through our lives of faithfulness.